Mr. Lawson?
Yes, Lady Leon, I'm hearing you clearly.
It's live on YouTube, so hear me
Just give
quietly.
me 1 minute. Let me stop
Quietly.
this thing from playing. 1 minute.
Quietly, please.
All
Mr.
right,
Lawson?
ma'am. Yes, I'm hearing you now. Yes, Lady Leon, I'm hearing you clearly.
It's live on YouTube, so hear me quietly.
Just give me 1 minute. Let me
Quietly.
stop this thing from playing. 1 minute.
Quietly, please.
You're still hearing it? All right, ma'am. 1 minute. I'm hearing you now. Yes, Lady Leon, I'm hearing you clearly.
It's live on YouTube, so hear me quietly.
Just give me 1 minute. Let me stop this thing. Hi, Lady Leon. You hearing me now?
Yes, sir.
Good, good. I was hearing some
There.
feedback in the thing just now.
I was saying to you that we're live on YouTube, so we have to pause all conversations.
Okay.
Great.
Hey, Lady Leach. Any one of the links will get you in.
Mr. Lawson, I just shared the link in the chat, and Dr. Dice should be promoted.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this session. We will begin with the national anthem of Jamaica.
Eternal Father, bless our land. Guide us with thy mighty hand. Keep us free from evil powers. Be our light through countless hours. To our leaders, great defenders, grant true wisdom from above. Justice, fruits be ours forever. Jamaica, land we love. Jamaica, 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 land we love. Teach us true respect for all. Stir response to duty's call. Strengthen us the weak to cherish. Give us visions lest we perish. Knowledge centers, heavenly Father, grant true wisdom from above. Justice, truth be ours forever. Jamaica, land we love. Jamaica, 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 land we love.
Our national anthem is indeed a prayer unto God. Over the past 10 years of being a librarian, I've had my fair share of not sleeping. In those times when there are deadlines to meet, children to take care of, dealing with projects, meetings to attend, and time is just not my share of the game. Sleep is the furthest thing from my mind. Now, if you have had that experience, I want you to just go ahead and type yes in the chat or go in the chat. I know I'm not alone. So let me see the yes. I know. Yes. Now, this webinar will take us on a journey, and it will provide a wider perspective and give broader understanding of how we go about sleep, how to look after ourselves as we try to get over this pandemic and easily and in a healthy way. Hello, everyone, and welcome to part two of this international webinar series under the overarching theme, Disrupting the Narrative, Retooling the Educator for the Global Reset and Beyond. My name is Melanie Leach, Chief Librarian here at the Michael University College, and it is my distinct pleasure to be your moderator for this afternoon's proceedings. The focus for this session is titled The Importance of Sleep to Teachers' Mental and Physical Health in Changing Times, an initiative to highlight the importance of sleep and the lack thereof to our mental and physical health. With this topic, we have a great presentation coming up for everyone, and we are delighted to have in our midst one of the world's experts on the topic of sleep, Dr. Azizi Seixas. With that said, I look forward to us having an engaging session, especially with your participation. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we begin. The session is being recorded, so please be mindful if you decide to turn on your videos. The presentation will last for 45 minutes, so for the better sound quality, we have all muted our mics and just to ensure that we get through the session peacefully. However, we would love to hear from you. So if you have any questions during the presentation, please type them in the Q&A section located at the bottom of your screen. I will bring them up in the 30 minutes question and answer at the end of the presentation. Now, with everything that we do, we must invite the presence of the Lord. And as such, I invite at this time Mr. Alvin Lawson, University Practicum Coordinator, to bless this afternoon's proceedings.
Let us pray. Father in heaven, we give you thanks for the opportunity of meeting like this. Lord, as we come, we pray that all that will be done here and said in this session will be all to the greater glory of God. And we just give you thanks, Almighty God, for health and strength. Lord, we pray your guidance upon the proceedings. All these and other mercies we ask through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Lawson. Now we know we have persons in our midst from probably various countries, school principals, teachers, students, and we appreciate you taking this time to spend with us. We want to express our appreciation to you, and at this time, I invite Dr. Kay Dunkley, Dean of the Faculty of Humanities and Liberal Arts, to do us the honors. Dean Dunkley.
A very pleasant good afternoon. I stand here saying good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, our esteemed presenter, Dr. Assisi Seixas. And sir, I went and checked out how to say your name properly. I hope I got it right. As we begin this seminar, I would like to thank all the persons who stood behind this, committed to making it happen. Because as it stands right now, for probably the first time in a long time, we are connecting, and we're connecting across geographical boundaries. And thanks to COVID, we are connected, more connected, and we are sometimes I think connected 24/7. With that connection, and I play on the word connection, with that connection, sometimes sleep, as Mrs. Leach pointed out, sleep is the last thing on our list. In fact, if it catches the list and we get a nap here and there, we're lucky maybe. I would like to say thank you also for the audience for turning out, and I see the numbers growing. Thank you for turning out, because as it stands within our space of isolation because of COVID, our culture has changed. We are a touchy culture. We're a feely culture. We're a rest culture. We're a culture that says siesta is natural. And probably for the first time in our century, maybe, we are on go, and maybe always on the go. I look forward to the discussions. I look forward to the presentation of sleep and that elusive concept of good sleep, not only sleep, but good sleep. And I look forward to this discussion being held in the context of change, because we have to disrupt the narrative. COVID has happened. COVID is here. What can we learn from it? How can we benefit from it? Again, I stand behind the persons who conceptualized this presentation or this international webinar, because we are being graced by Dr. Assisi Seixas, who we probably would never be able to afford, sir, under normal circumstances. We also say thank you to the persons who have turned out today, and thank you again for making this a reality for the Michael University College. Again, The MICA stands firm in disrupting the narrative, and we're going to be doing it with all of our might. This is the second of our fourth series, and I hope that many other persons here will join us not only on this one, but on the ones to come. Welcome, sir. Welcome, esteemed colleagues. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, audience. I look forward to being feasted on the concept of sleep and learning more about it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Dean Dunkley. And with that, I hope we have our cups or our jugs or barrels up to take it all in. Now, we do value your time, and so we will get straight into it. Now, before coming onto this platform, Dr. Seixas, I did a little research, and I say, okay, so of course I got on the internet and listened to some interviews, and I was like, Dr. Seixas is really teaching me here, right, Dean Dunkley? So I was like, I really did not know so much about sleep. I mean, yes, we know that we ought to sleep, but just by listening to the information, my eyes were open. So I'm really, really, Dr. Seixas, looking forward to this presentation today. Now, did you know that sleep significantly impacts our ability to learn? And did you also know that sleep compromises our immune system? We may also ask the question, can nap really derail your sleep schedule? These are some of the questions that will be answered by our special guest presenter here today, Dr. Azizi Seixas. And at this point in time, I will invite Mrs. Maureen Mullings Nelson, University College Placement Officer, to introduce today's presenter.
Thank you, colleagues. Good afternoon, everyone. Dr. Azizi Seixas is the assistant professor at the New York University. He's a faculty member in the Department of Population Health and Psychiatry. Dr. Seixas' research broadly focuses on the following areas. Firstly, multi-level determinants of sleep, brain and mental health, aging, and cardiovascular disease disparities. Secondly, long-term health consequences of cardiovascular disease and mental health disparities. Thirdly, developing adaptive, group-tailored, and personalized behavior modification interventions. Finally, the use of machine learning analytical tools and translational artificial intelligence to improve health and well-being. Dr. Seixas is recognized by Cell Press as one of the top 100 inspiring Black scientists in America. He has over 100 high-impact peer-reviewed publications, book chapters, and conference presentations, and his work appears in several media outlets such as CBS, CNN, NBC, Associated Press, The Guardian, Huffington Post, and he is the sleep expert for NBC Health News. He is currently the chair for the American Academy of Sleep Medicine Young Investigator Research Forum. He is also a member of the Artificial Intelligence and Machine Learning Subcommittee for the American Academy of Sleep Medicine. He serves on the NCAA and Department of Defense Task Force on Mental Health, and is also the director of the Early Career Faculty Development for the Department of Population Health at NYU. Dr. Seixas is a prolific and well sought after speaker on a wide range of topics that include the role of sleep on health and performance, how to improve sleep quality, personalizing one's lifestyle and healthy behaviors to achieve successful, fulfilling, and healthy lives, the use of technology to improve health outcomes and health systems, social commentaries and solutions on how to improve healthcare, personalized and strategic career planning and development, and the role of wraparound mentorship in organizations and corporations for staff and executive development. Ladies and gentlemen, it is with distinct pleasure that we welcome Dr. Azizi Seychus to be our guest presenter this afternoon. Let us
Thank
put our
you.
hands together.
Thank you so much. Oh, wow. I feel as if I do not need to present because the preceding speakers covered most of what I will be capturing. And I think they're far more eloquent and intelligent. And I think they're going to be far more appealing than anything that I would have to say subsequently. But I would perhaps get in trouble with Mr. Lawson, who I will tell a very short story soon. But before I do, I just want to take the opportunity of how honored I am and how humbled I am by the invitation from the Michael for making me be one of the keynotes in this year's webinar. I think it's quite an appropriate topic in the area of being disruptive in a time of change. I oftentimes say that when life provides pauses, it provides pivots and opportunities. And so I just want to congratulate the Michael, Dean Dunkley, and your team, Mrs. Leach, as well as Mr. Lawson and all the folks in the leadership and the student body of the Michael for trailblazing over 185 years of training the next generation of educators. And so I know that I was a product of many, many teachers who came through the Michael. And so I salute you all for your work and being pioneers in this space. And so it is no surprise that this institution that would be providing such an avenue and a platform to talk about things and issues and topics that no one else is talking about, i.e. sleep, would be the Michael. So I salute you and I congratulate you. I also want to pay a special acknowledgement to Mr. Lawson. If you probably hear my diction, it's quite weighted. And oftentimes it is weighted in a way where I am always trying to find the right words to really capture the sentiment and the meanings of what I am trying to say. And that was perhaps partly God-given, but it was cultivated by many teachers, one of which I see right in front of me, Mr. Lawson. And so it was such an honor, Mr. Lawson, when you reached out to me and said that you were thinking about inviting me, and I would not have done anything else but to be here. So thank you so much for all that you do. And I believe there are other teachers who went to my alma, who are present from my alma mater, the great St. George's College, which is why I'm donning the sky blue. So sorry if I offend anyone, but the fairer side of North Street lies where on the blue side. But nothing but love. We're all Jamaicans here. And I won't bore you anymore, but thank you so much again for the opportunity. And I think in many ways, what I really wanted to capture today, and just bear with me as I get my slide deck ready. And just give me the thumbs up if you all are able to see perfect. So before I jump in, when Mr. Lawson reached out to me, I was currently a faculty member at NYU School of Medicine. But not until yesterday, I began a new journey where I am now associate professor, which means I've moved up to the University of Miami School of Medicine, which is not so far from Jamaica, where I will be leading, I'll be directing the Media and Innovation Lab, which will be the #1 global leader in pioneering state-of-the-art digital technologies around health and bringing it to the fingertips of people, as well as I'll serve as Associate Director for a newly formed center focused on translational sleep and circadian sciences. So with that, I just want to make one clarification because I don't want to get in trouble with my new dean at the University of Miami, because officially since yesterday, I am now faculty at the University of Miami. I am still affiliated with NYU as an adjunct. So today we're going to talk a little bit about sleep. And in many ways, I will try and walk you on this journey. Because I am going to assume that folks don't really know much about sleep from a scientific standpoint. I think a lot of you know a lot about sleep from a personal side. So let's walk through a little bit of basics as it relates to sleep. And I won't go through that anymore to bore you. A little bit about the Media Innovation Lab, but let me just kind of share broadly what my research focuses on. And the reason why it's important that I share this is I want you to know that the things that I'm about to say, that it's all grounded and rooted in research and science and research done by myself and my group, as well as some of my good friends and colleagues throughout the world. And essentially what we're trying to do is we're trying to describe, to capture that there is a sleep crisis, and there's a sleep crisis in America. And based on some of the evidence that I'll show later on in the slide deck, that there is actually a sleep crisis in Jamaica and the Caribbean as well. And then once we've identified and described what the sleep issues are, I'm going to walk you through to talk about how is it that we're trying to engineer new solutions that can allow us to better understand what are the costs and consequences of sleep on our health, as well as our everyday activities. And then, of course, I can't just leave you with what goes wrong and what will potentially go wrong. I have to share with you some potential solutions, either solutions that could prevent the inimical effects of poor sleep, or to arrest the progression of the negative and adverse consequences that sleep may have on your health. And I'll share with you some solutions there. So let's talk and let's have a little bit of fun, because I know that, speaking with you at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock my time, I'm sure you have a whole lot more things to do than listen to me. So I am going to, try and educate and entertain at the same time. So let's walk through the basics of sleep and let's play a little bit of a game. And so what I'll ask you to do is to just type in the chat for those of you in the panelists, core, as well as attendees. So if I were to ask you this question, whether or not it's true or false, the human body can adapt to needing less than 7 to 8 hours of sleep. What do you all think, true or false? All right, okay. I'm seeing some come in. Okay, all right, okay. In many ways, your body can adapt in some ways, but it oftentimes comes with a price, and I'll share that with you. Alcohol close to bed will help your sleep. What do you think, true or false? I see some coming in, okay. Now, this one is a bit tricky. Why? Because oftentimes people who may have insomnia, and insomnia essentially means individuals who may have difficulties falling asleep, staying asleep, or may wake up involuntarily and are unable to go back to sleep. And oftentimes those individuals who have difficulties falling asleep, they believe that if they were to have a little bit of libation or a little bit of alcohol, that it would induce sleep. And so, yes, that is correct. It does induce sleep, but there is actually a peril with that. So what we've done, and a lot of work that we have done, especially with our friends, where we have found that even though alcohol may have a sedative effect, where it may induce sleep, especially if you're having a hard time falling asleep, that in many ways it disturbs your sleep architecture. And I'll share a little bit more later on what that means. And oftentimes people who use alcohol as the primary method of falling asleep typically have restless nights, they have nightmares, they wake up frequently throughout the night. And in many ways, it has a counter effect whereby you're not being well rested. So another one. So you can make up for lost sleep by sleeping in on weekends. And I'm sure my teachers probably love this one. What do you think? True or false? Good. I see some comments coming in. So typically, sleep loss is not necessarily sleep gain. You can't necessarily bank your sleep and say, well, you know what? I'm going to sleep 5-6 hours during the week. And then on weekends, I'm going to sleep for 12 hours. To follow that type of lifestyle really captures this phenomenon called social jet lag. And social jet lag has been shown more recently to be linked with high levels of obesity as well as cardiometabolic dysfunction, where your A1C levels are just out of whack, always in flux. So you don't want to do that. The key thing about sleep is that you want to maintain a regular and consistent sleep time as well as duration. So, sorry, teachers, you can't necessarily catch up on lost time. No, this doesn't mean, I don't want you to say, Dr. Azizi said, that if you don't get enough sleep during the week, then it doesn't make any sense getting rest over the weekend. I am not saying that. But this notion, and I've seen a lot of patients and a lot of people build up lifestyle routines whereby they really go hard during the week, and then on weekends, they binge on sleep, and that doesn't work. Snoring is annoying, but mostly harmless. What do you think? Good. I see some comments coming in. Essentially, snoring can be somewhat harmless. However, snoring is a very key signature symptom of one of the most devastating sleep disorders called sleep apnea. And I'll share a little bit more, but essentially sleep apnea is when someone has either partial or full blockage of airflow when you're sleeping. And what happens in a very scary way, if you know someone with sleep apnea, maybe you're someone who has sleep apnea, that essentially if you're lying beside someone and they are going through an episode where they are not getting any oxygen, it seems as if that they've lost consciousness and that they're not breathing, and that can be scary. Not only is it scary for the witness, but it's even scarier and quite disruptive and harmful to the body for that individual. Because during those 30 seconds or 40 seconds where you're not getting oxygen, that can cause significant disruption to certain key biological and physiological processes. And it's oftentimes linked with higher rates of stroke as well as dementia. So just want to share that with you just to bust some of those myths. So let's get into detail in terms of why is it that we need? Why is it that we sleep? And why do we need to sleep? There are three primary reasons why we need to sleep. The first of which is for restoration. Why is that important? Well, you go through a very hectic day, and oftentimes your body needs to find opportunities for it to restore its energy and restore itself, right? And so you can't be going 100% all the time. Second, energy conservation. Your cells are oftentimes working, and if you are continually working your cells, it can wear and tear, and that can lead to accelerated aging and illness. So this is another reason why sleep is important. And third, sleep is absolutely vital in protecting the master organ in our bodies called our brains. And what we have seen, and a lot of my work focuses on trying to understand how sleep is important for the brain. So I'll just share with you quite briefly. Do you know that the brain needs to clean itself on a daily basis? Why, you may ask? Well, because your brain is filled with thousands and thousands upon cells. And those cells help to bring nutrients to different parts of your brain. However, just like a machine, where if you have a machine grinding daily, that it oftentimes deposits certain debris. And so your cells act in that way. So you will have a ton of cellular debris after a day. But do you know that sleep is the only or one of the most optimal behavioral activities that we can do to clear the brain of these debris? Exercise does it to a certain extent, but only during sleep, where you can clear your brain. So the brain has a vacuum system that works optimally when you're asleep. So I hope I was able to convince you, why is it that we sleep? And I'm sure there are so many different new enigmatic purposes and reasons why sleep is important. Now that I explained to you why sleep is key, let me focus on what is sleep. And so while sleep in many ways seems like this unconscious process, it is actually a very well-rooted physiological experience. It consists of 4 major stages. And not to confuse you per se, but it really has 2 main phases. One is non-REM, which is non-rapid eye movement, and REM, which is rapid eye movement. So to give you a better sense as to what that looks like, rapid eye movement, and please forgive me, especially with all that's going on in Jamaica. But if you've ever seen when someone is sleeping and their eyes are slightly open and you see the white in their eyes and their eyelids are flickering, that's when they're in rapid eye movement sleep, right? And it seems like, oh my goodness, that person, I oftentimes have patients and folks come to me, hey, it looks like that person is possessed. No, they're not possessed. They're just going through rapid eye movement. No, in the non-rapid eye movement, which is the first major phase, it has 3 stages. Stage 1, which is typically this period when you transition. And I raise my hand, I get busted doing this oftentimes. My wife and I were watching a movie and she says, hey, did you see that? And I'm like, yeah, I see it. And she's like, no, you didn't see it. Tell me what happened. I was like, no. I was watching with my eyes. We all say this from time to time. But this stage of sleep, you're slightly unconscious, but you can still hear things in your surroundings. So when my wife asked, hey, did you see that on the television? Well, I could respond to her, but I was still unconscious because I really wasn't watching the television. Then as you move deeper into sleep, you go into stage 2. This is where your body temperature drops, heart rate begins to slow down. All your core biological features and processes really starts to slow down, because sleep ultimately is to rest our bodies. Then as you go and you drift deeper into sleep, you go into this other stage called stage 3. This is when your muscles really relax, your blood pressure, your breathing rate dips completely, and then you start to go into deeper sleep. And then you go into REM sleep, and this is where your brain is actually even more active. It sounds somewhat paradoxical, because how is it that your brain is working, but you're unconscious to your surroundings? In fact, as I had mentioned to you, this is where the brain does a lot of its work, and it's typically marked by dreams. And I oftentimes tell people, they're like, how do you know you're getting good sleep? Well, I say, well, did you dream or did you remember your dream? And that doesn't necessarily mean that if you don't dream or if you don't remember your dream, it doesn't mean you're not getting good sleep, but it's usually a good indicator of that. Now, you go through these stages several times, and this entire complete cycle takes around 90 minutes. So you go through this over and over and over. The reason why this is important is because your REM sleep, you are a little bit more conscious in a way. And so when you're ready to wake up, when you don't need the alarm clock, then you are coming out of REM sleep. So let's look at some recommendations. And the National Sleep Foundation in the United States provided some guidelines as to what is optimal good sleep. I believe Dean Dunkley had asked about that. And essentially, it really depends on how old you are and what your age is. And the general principle is that when you're younger, you need more sleep. And as you're older, you don't need as much sleep, but it doesn't mean that you should sleep less. And so the reason why this is important is because sleep is so critical for brain development for newborns that they are going through a rapid stage of development, both neuronal and brain development and physiological, that their poor bodies need the time to rest in order to grow and to develop. And as you grow older, then you don't need as much. Now, there is this misunderstanding that our senior citizens or older adults don't need as much sleep, and that is incorrect. In fact, they need just as much as people in the midlife and young adults. The only issue is that oftentimes that they may break their sleep up similar as babies. So I oftentimes say sleep is almost like coming in full circle. Why? Babies nap a lot, right, throughout the night, what we call biphasic sleep, right? And not until the person becomes a toddler, then they start, or preschool, they start to just have one nap instead of one sleep rather, instead of having multiple naps. But as you grow older into being a senior citizen, then your body reverts back to that earlier sleep cycle where you are taking more naps. No, sleep is not a monolithic concept. In fact, it's quite pluralistic in the sense that it consists of so many different factors. Duration, which is one that oftentimes often spoken about, is just one. But there are others, such as sleepiness and alertness. How do you feel after you've woken up? That is a huge component of sleep. The timing of your sleep, otherwise what we call chronotype. So someone getting 8 hours, two different people getting 8 hours, they don't necessarily get the same sleep, because one person might sleep from 10 a.m., 10 p.m. rather, to the morning, and one person may actually get their 8 hours from 1 p.m. To 1 a.m. rather to 9 a.m. Totally different sleep. So timing matters. The efficiency of their sleep also is quite critical. Why is it so? Because oftentimes when you do go to bed, how many people fall asleep right away? Some of you, and for those of you, by the time you hit the bed and you're falling asleep, it's usually an indication that you're sleep deprived. But there are some people for whom, where when you fall asleep, you're tossing and turning and you have to read a book. So the time in bed is not actually spent sleeping, it's more so tossing and turning. So that would not be an efficient sleep. Satisfaction and quality, sleep disorders, architecture of your sleep, which I just spoke about, the different stages. So these are all the different components of sleep health. So you may ask, so how do I know that I have good sleep health? Well, my colleague Dan Bice at the University of Pittsburgh and his team created this wonderful survey called Are You Sated? Feel free to snap a picture of this and go through it. And essentially it asks about some of the different components that I just spoke about regarding sleep health. It asks about regularity, satisfaction, alertness, timing, efficiency, and duration. But your sleep is just 1/3 of your day. What do you do for the other 2/3? And I'm one of those scientists who believe that we can't see sleep in isolation, meaning it's just the 1/3, it's only 8 hours of your day. In fact, I strongly argue that what you do preceding sleep significantly impacts the type of sleep and the amount of sleep that you will get. Now, this entire 24-hour cycle, both with what you do as an activity when you're awake and when you're asleep, is really on a biological rhythm called the circadian rhythm. And essentially your circadian rhythm is this natural and internal biological process that regulates sleep and wake over a 24-hour period. It also regulates components of our biology, such as organ function and clinical markers and everything. And it's primarily driven by this really cool thing in our brains called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, right? And it's this part in our brain that sends messages to our brain and say, hey, it's dark, it's time to get sleep. And it sends all these messages by sending both hormones and a hormone called melatonin. And it says it's time to get your body ready for sleep. And all of these processes occur over a 24-hour period of time in a very seamless way. And so this is one nice figure that really highlights when you are more likely to optimally do something, when you have your deepest sleep, when you have your greatest level of alertness and concentration. All of these things are not flukes. All of these are governed by our innate biology. I oftentimes say this. Our circadian rhythm really are like the train tracks. Your body is the train. And if you start to shift, or if there is some kind of shift in those tracks, i.e. the circadian rhythm, then it will throw the entire body off. So all of our organs, everything, all of our limbs, all of our tissue, all have cells, and they communicate with each other. And how they communicate with each other within time is through the circadian rhythm. So what we have also studied is that high rates of cancer, high rates of hypertension and diabetes and obesity and dementia are not just linked to poor sleep, but they are linked to misaligned circadian rhythms, which then disturbs and disrupts your sleep. And a lot of the work that we're doing shows that in many ways, a disruption in the level of alertness, which is the cortisol level and the hormone that is responsible for sleep, melatonin, they basically work in opposite direction throughout the day. Why is this important? Well, if you're very well rested, your cortisol level is very, very, very high. But your melatonin level is very low because you just slept. But over the given day, what happens is that your cortisol level goes down and your melatonin level probably should go up. This is a process called process C and process S. But I want you to look at this graph closely. And as you can see, that the cortisol level, which is the blue line, actually starts to dip around 3 p.m., 2 p.m. thereabout. And I oftentimes tell people this, that the fact that people want their afternoon coffee or caffeine or to drink some tea or something like that, it's not because they're hungry per se, it's because their cortisol level has gone down and dipped and they're trying to eat to pick up back their level of cortisol level and energy so that they can finish out the day. So if you can understand how your circadian rhythm operates, you can start to determine a more personalized wellness strategy for yourself. When to eat, when to sleep, when to partake in certain activities. And you may wonder, well, how is it that I can better understand my chronotype, my circadian rhythm? So a good friend of mine, beg your pardon, Dr. Michael Bruce, came up with this fantastic caricature to better understand different circadian profiles, and he believes that there are 4. First is a bear. These are the people who, their sleep-wake patterns follow the sun, and they have no difficulty falling asleep at all. You have the lions. These people wake up early, and these are the go-getters. These are the type A movers and shakers, right? And their sleep pattern is governed around that. Then you have the wolf. These are the folks who are nocturnal, that they do most of their work and they're most active later on in the day. So, you ever heard of morning people and evening people and all of those? This is what he's doing, but he's doing it in a nice caricature way to better understand your profile. And the last is a dolphin. These people don't necessarily have a regular sleep routine. One day they'll go to bed early and another day they'll go to bed late. And that constant shifting and reshifting can cause significant disruption. So, you can definitely go and check out Michael's book to see which chronotype you are. Outside of the understanding or chronotype, I want you to understand that there are some serious consequences. And unfortunately, it's almost like hypertension, where high blood pressure is a silent killer. Poor sleep, I would say, is an even more silent killer. It has a significant cost. This is work that we did where we showed, we looked at the United States over several years. And we found that people who are short sleepers, people who got less than, 7 hours, 6 hours of sleep on a nightly basis, and long sleepers, people who got 9 hours and more, actually had greater healthcare expenditure, meaning these folks use the healthcare system far greater, which is a proxy that they were actually sicker than individuals who got adequate sleep, which is around 7 to 8 hours of sleep. But there are some significant health consequences. As I'd mentioned, there's a link between sleep apnea, particularly obstructive sleep apnea, and type 2 diabetes. I won't share you, but this graph shows a meta-analysis that looked at relative risk. And you can see in those red boxes that I highlighted, your risk, if you have untreated sleep apnea, your risk for type 2 diabetes is on a range from 0.91 all the way to 13. So you may have a 13-fold probability and likelihood of getting diabetes. And one of the things that we tell our patients all the time, that they're like, I don't really eat a lot of carbs. I'm really eating healthily. I'm eating well. Why is it that my glucose level is still high? And so oftentimes we have them walk through and put down a diary, and what they find, and what we've oftentimes found, is that their poor sleep is actually driving the elevated glucose levels. No, you may ask, well, in cases where someone has untreated sleep apnea, we have also shown, because I'm not one of those scientists who says, well, if you don't do this, something bad is going to happen to you. I like to provide a balance. And the balance is, yes, I've just identified what could go wrong, but here is it I'm showing. If you get the necessary treatment, you see the significant health benefits, where in this study, they followed people over a 24-week period, and they were able to show that people who actually use CPAP, and CPAP is the gold standard treatment to treat sleep apnea, that these folks had better insulin sensitivity, better levels of triglycerides, and they had lower levels of systolic blood pressure. So this goes to show that having a sleep disorder is not a condemnation, that there is actually a solution. Also, if we look at sleep duration, that what I just shared with you, and this, we've done some extensive work in this space, that sleeping too little and sleeping too much can increase your likelihood of getting disease, and it actually increases your likelihood of dying earlier. Now let's look at some other areas that are more germane to New York, since I was at NYU and I've done a lot of my work. And I think in some ways it is appropriate for us, because a lot of the folks that I see are Caribbean folks, Jamaican folks, right? And so what we're able to show, and if you look at this, that individuals who didn't get 7 hours or more, they are more likely to be obese, they were more likely to be physically inactive, and they were more likely to be smokers, which can increase your risk for other health consequences. Similarly, when you look at individuals who don't get enough sleep, look at the greater risk of heart attacks, coronary heart disease, strokes, asthma, COPD, arthritis, depression, and diabetes. So I hope I'm convincing, and I mean, oftentimes I don't want to scare you, but I don't want you to take your sleep lightly at all, because these are some potential health consequences that are waiting on you. Similarly, when you look at this, and this is, I care very dearly about this, Because what we have also found, and this study bears this out, that when you look at racial ethnic minorities, if you look at Black folks, if you look at Caribbean folks, that when we don't get enough sleep, our health risks are far greater than our European counterparts. So don't see it as you have equal risk. In fact, you don't have equal risk because you not getting enough sleep significantly increases your likelihood and you have a greater chance of having poor health outcomes. Similarly, work done looking at inflammation, which is this precursor to disease. So even if you don't get the disease, even if you don't have some kind of morbidity, that what we're starting to see is that we can see the percolation of something coming, right? So we can, through inflammation, looking at, CRP, which is an inflammatory marker, we can see that there's something going to happen. Now, it could be arthritis, it could be cancer, it could be some heart disease. And what we've shown is that individuals who don't get enough sleep are more likely to have elevated levels of inflammation. And when you look at, for Black individuals, that it is far greater than whites, Hispanics, and Asians. What are the mental health consequences? Significant. When you look at individuals who are short sleepers, don't get enough sleep, versus individuals who get good sleep and enough sleep, look at the prevalence of depression, 22, almost 23%, as compared to individuals at 15% who get sufficient sleep. Let's look at dementia. If you look at this, looking at sleep duration, and you can see that individuals who don't get enough sleep and who sleep too much, they have an increased risk for dementia. So I hope I was able to convince you that not getting enough sleep is not good. And I just shared with you a variety of health outcomes that are linked with that. No, I don't want to scare you, but I think scaring you has a little bit, it's a little bit of a strategy, because I don't want people to say, oh, well, whatever. Now, this doesn't mean that more sleep is associated with positive health outcomes. In fact, no, because I think I just shared with you that people who get too much sleep, in fact, have adverse and negative health outcomes. So the logic is not that if you don't get enough sleep, you need to get more. In fact, what this is really saying, and this work, we've done, and some of our colleagues in Cambridge, England, have done this, where we looked at long sleep and stroke. And what essentially we're finding is that it's not that, you shouldn't get more sleep. It's who should get more sleep. So if you're someone who sleeps 7 to 8 hours on a daily basis, you don't need to extend your sleep. But if you're one of those individuals who you're a short sleeper and you get 5 hours, you get 6 hours or 4 hours, then, increasing and extending your sleep is important. And similarly, you see this with dyslipidemia. So you can look, anybody who goes for their annual physical, check it, trust me, improve your sleep for 6 months and a year and a half and 2 years. You will see that extending your sleep will, in fact, improve your lipid profiles when you get your physical and your annual. Now, sleep efficiency is key. And this, I won't bore you with this, but essentially what this study is showing is that sleep duration is just not the end all and be all, that when you go to bed, make sure you are actually sleeping, right? And so this is, study showed that people who didn't get efficient sleep, had greater health outcomes. Blood pressure was higher, insulin resistance was higher, cholesterol levels were higher, and they had a lot more adipose, a lot more fat around significant parts of their bodies that you shouldn't carry weight, particularly around the gut area. Daytime sleepiness and CVD. So if you're one of those individuals and you're sleeping and you're yawning and you're like, oh, I'm so tired. Why am I so tired? I would suggest that you should check it out. Why? Because in a very long, big study a longitudinal study, they were able to see this. People who reported high levels of daytime sleepiness, and it could be because, you know, their sleep duration was less, or their efficiency wasn't as high, or maybe they have some sleep disorder, and those are the other factors that I've spoken about, that they have an elevated risk for cardiovascular disease, which is heart disease. And the quality of your sleep is important as well. So if you see here that there's this thing what we call a dose-response relationship, and I don't want to make it too overly scientific, but as you can see, that the greater the sleep quality, the better your insulin profile. And that's the key thing. Another area that is key for you to understand, in terms of your timing, and we looked at people who are daytime workers, nighttime workers, and if you look at daytime workers had better health outcomes. I think someone has their mic open, so if you just go on mute, please. Thank you. Also, when we look at the sleep architecture, remember I spoke about, non-rapid eye movement and the different stages and the rapid eye movement. This is key. Here is why. So a lot of my work, as I said, focuses on, heart disease. And here's what we found. So we'd have like patients come in and you give them a ton of antihypertensive medication, 3 different classes, and we're like, what's going on? Why is it that their blood pressure level isn't coming down? And when you peel the layers and we send them home to do like a home study where we're monitoring their sleep and we're monitoring their blood pressure at the same time. And what we're realizing is that these individuals, that they don't go through the different stages that I spoke about. Stage 1, 2, 3, they'll skip, or it will be fragmented, or they don't spend enough time in some of the critical periods like a stage 3 sleep. And here's what we found, that in fact, when you fall asleep, your blood pressure should dip. It should come down. So if your systolic blood pressure is about 125, right, or so, then it should drop a few points, mercury points. But what we've found is that there are some people who, when they have elevated blood pressure, because of sleep, it just stays high. And then this can lead to a whole different class of hypertension called resistant hypertension, where no wonder why we throw so many different antihypertensive medication and it just wasn't working out at all, because they weren't getting good quality sleep going through the different stages. It's the same thing for glucose levels and cholesterol levels as well. And then we've also done some work trying to understand, okay, this relationship between short sleep and heart disease, that might be affected by your BMI, your weight, the amount of stress you have, the amount of physical activity you partake in. And we were able to find that. So what you want to do, reduce your BMI, your weight. You want to reduce or try and curtail a lot of stress, because that impacts your sleep. But in many ways, being stressed lowers your sleep, but it also raises your stress levels. So it increases your likelihood of getting heart disease. And not being physically active can significantly impact your risk for heart disease. So a lot of the work that I do, I think Mrs. Leach had mentioned, is in the space, and Ms. Nelson had mentioned, in the space of AI. And I truly believe that this is an opportunity, because this is kind of the sine qua non of this webinar, being disruptive. So what I have said, and a lot of my colleagues have followed suit, that just telling people do more, do better is not gonna cut it. Why? Because all I have to do is to think about my own mother, think about so many other moms out there right now, and that's a single mom, single dad with 2, 3 children, having to work 2 jobs. How can I tell them get 7, 8, 9 hours of sleep? That is totally incongruent and inconsistent with their lifestyle. So what we have to do as scientists and clinicians is to find other opportunities that can reduce the risk, provide not this one-size-fits-all recommendation, but more personalized. And we were able to do that, where based on how much sleep someone got, we told them, how much physical activity you could partake in, and for how long, and the frequency, and that reduced their stroke risk. Also, sleep and physical activity aren't just cousins of each other, they actually are more married to each other. Why? Because there's this study that showed that individuals who exercise a lot but didn't get enough sleep versus individuals who got good sleep and were marginally moderately active, their levels were better. Their glucose levels were better. Their cognitive, levels were much better. And their level of sleepiness and alertness was much better. So the take-home message is this: don't kill yourself doing a whole bunch of physical activity if you're not going to get enough sleep, because in order for you to confer the most health benefits from exercise is to get good sleep. I oftentimes say sleep provides a wonderful biological environment, the terroir, in which you can promote good health. Now let's focus on sleep in Jamaica, because I wasn't going to leave us out. So my colleagues, Dr. Terence Forrester and some others, Dr. Amy Luke, had done this really pioneering study with 5 different countries throughout the world, Jamaica being one. And they were able to isolate and look at sleep. And if you look at the gender difference here, that if you look at Jamaica versus Ghana, Seychelles, USA, and South Africa, that look at how many more people in Jamaica had less sleep. Looking at that, a whole lot more, especially for men, as well as our women. So it goes to show that a whole bunch of us in Jamaica are not getting adequate sleep. And these are comparing, we're not comparing us with like white folks here now, we're comparing ourselves with other Black folks. So there's a significant sleep issue in Jamaica. Now you may ask, so what? What's the point of that? What they also found was that those individuals who did not get good sleep in Jamaica, guess what? Their obesity levels and obesity rates were so much higher. And so the key thing here is both short sleepers and long sleepers. Don't get too little, don't get too much. Significantly impacted folks in Jamaica, right? Now, what does that mean for teachers? Well, we know that teachers are significantly impacted by these. Why? Because you sweat and you toil and you work around the clock, physically, emotionally, mentally, to serve the needs of your students. And so there was a study done just surveying people in the United States, and something tells me that the trends will be the same in Jamaica, if not worse, where they found that 43% of teachers were short sleepers. They weren't getting enough sleep. 64 said that they felt drowsy during the school, but yet still they were pushing along. 50% said that they experienced daytime sleepiness at least 3 times per week. And only a third of the school personnel admit to getting good night's sleep. So it goes to show that 2/3, 66% of our teachers and our educators are sleep deprived. No, not only is it important for teachers to take care of themselves, but because you all are heroic servants to our country, you are so focused on developing the young minds of our country that I want you to be aware of how sleep can impact your classroom and how it impacts the students that you serve. Now, this is not akin to Jamaica, but very good colleague of mine did this instrumental work looking at a very diverse population. And she looked at adolescents and they were trying to understand how is it that sleep impacts students. And there's been a ton of research that shows that short sleep impacts concentration, attention, performance, grades, social and emotional learning in the classroom. And what she was able to do in this wonderful study is that what they found, comparing whites versus Black students, that Black students overwhelmingly reported that they weren't getting enough sleep. compared to their white counterparts. And I'm sure these numbers are similar. Now, how do we make meaning of that? And particularly more germane to the context of Jamaica, how is it that we can understand why is it that our students or why you might actually be suffering from poor sleep? Because I'm not one of those folks that says it's all on you. Why? Because there's so many sociocultural and system level factors that are at play. And I'm providing two models that you can borrow and use to understand the poor sleep that you're seeing in yourself, the poor sleep that you're seeing amongst your class, in your class rather, and amongst your students. There are so many factors. So not trying to give you more to do, but before you chastise that student for nodding off, you pull them aside and you can pull up one of these figures and you can say, what's going on? And I know most of you are doing this. And so I'm not saying that you have to do more, but it's not a form of truancy or disobedience, because we have seen it so many times that students are suffering at home and school is such a haven for them that they need the school environment to provide that level of structure and nurturing. And in many ways, it provides this perfect storm. So in as much as you want to understand the context, but we have to really think seriously about what we give our students to eat. So no caffeine, no smoking, no vaping, drugs. Particular illicit drugs can have a significant biological and psychosocial impact on kids. School start time as well. So if the school starts at 7 a.m., I'm sorry, I know I'm going to get in trouble, but that shouldn't be the case, because myself and some colleagues out at Stanford, they've moved legislature to say, hey, adolescents cannot go to school before 8 a.m. or 8:30 a.m. Why? Because there's a part of their brain called the prefrontal cortex that is still developing. And biologically, the circadian rhythm, remember that concept? It has shifted down the road for adolescents, which makes them sleepier during the morning. So adolescents who go to bed later, it's not because they're just gallivanting. It's because their poor bodies have physiologically shifted. Their circadian rhythms have shifted. And so this is why I want you to better understand that, adolescents in particular, their prefrontal cortex, the part of their brain that is important for executive function, is still developing. Now, I just convinced you, I hope, why sleep is important. Let me provide some solutions as to how to manage poor sleep. So 10 most common mistakes. Falling asleep at different times. Don't want to do that. Make sure it's consistent. Exercising too close to bedtime. No. I say about 2 hours before you want to go to bed, you should exercise. I think I spoke about sleeping in on weekends. Can't catch up on it at all. Be mindful. Napping for inappropriate times. Why is that? You don't want to take a nap too close to bedtime. Why? Remember what I had shared with you earlier. Process C, process S, cortisol, melatonin, right? You want to ensure that your thirst and drive for sleep is very high by the time you're ready to go to bed. But if you take a nap, guess what happens? It reduces the drive to sleep. So you don't want to take naps too close to bedtime. Caffeine too close to bedtime, not good, because it's a stimulant, not good at all, can lead to insomnia. Don't want to go to bed stressed or angry. So, if you know your sister going to tell you all sort of, pasa or any kind of thing, please just say, you know what, can we take this in the morning? Don't do that at all. Or if that person is going to stress you out, don't do that at all. And you want to ensure that your bedroom is a sanctuary and a haven for that. So not too hot. And I know this is quite a hard thing, because not many folks in Jamaica have the luxury of having different coolants, whether it be a fan or AC. And so not many people live in environments where they can open the window and let in a lot of, fresh air as well as a fan. So I know that is very, very tough. So try and do as much as you can in order to make sure that you can get good sleep. And I'll provide something a little bit more concrete. So if you have identified yourself as one of those individuals that you say, you know what, I think I need to improve my sleep, here's what you do. Don't just change it like that. I strongly advise you to use a sleep diary for 7 days. And here are the two things that you want to be aware of. Look for what are some external cues or factors that impact your sleep, right? Then you want to look at internal, psychological, right? Maybe one day you're just very stressed and you didn't get good sleep, right? And so that you have to write that down. And you want to be able to develop a sleep routine. I oftentimes tell people, you don't just fall asleep. You have to prepare to go to sleep. And it's a phrase that I've always coined saying, start your day with sleep. Why is it important to start your day with sleep? Because if you see sleep as an investment, and you have a big presentation or it's your hectic day and you have several classes and it's your hard class and the students are just difficult, you gotta sleep well the night before. It's important. So you gotta start your day with sleep, meaning your day actually starts the night before. And therefore, you are able to be well rested. Now, how do you establish a sleep plan? And we do this, and it's something that we've kind of, borrowed from Very Well Health, where they have a 30-day sleep plan. And you can go through this list. If you have significant sleep problems, I'm happy to talk to anyone after. You can reach out to me. And we walk them through to say, okay, do the diary. Let's figure out day by day, how is it that we can improve your sleep? So with that, I'm open to questions. Sorry that I stayed over, but I was just super excited. Thank you so much for having me, and open for questions, and I'll stop sharing my screen.
Wow. I think that is all I can say from here on now, Dr. Seixas. I mean, I was just like a sponge just now. I was just taking it all in. I really wrote down a lot of takeaways from this session, and I'm sure other persons in the room would have done the same. I really appreciated the wealth of knowledge that you brought to this session, the research that you showed to us. It convinced me. It frightened me. So now I am sure that I will do better, because I'm one of those dolphins. So I learned some things today, right? So I don't know if there's any bear out there, lions, wolf, or dolphins, but I am definitely a dolphin. Oh, I'm seeing in the chat here, there are some wolves, right? Cool, nice. But my takeaways from this session. And just before I go into the question and answer segments, and may I just remind the persons, please to type your questions in the Q&A section. I will definitely be raising same with Dr. Seixas for you to get all your questions answered. But just to squeeze in my little takeaways. Sleep ultimately is the rest for our bodies. Sleep is the most optimal exercise we can do to clean the brain. Didn't even know that, sir. Timing matters, and what you do preceding sleep impacts how much sleep you get. I am a busybody, sir, so I do a lot of work before I sleep. But I thank you so much for this session this afternoon. I now know that I have to adjust and readjust my patterns. And one of the most important things, I know that we're all in this room, for the most part, are educators. 66% of the teachers are sleep deprived. That is alarming. That's really alarming. And so thank you for the takeaway, sir. I know you would have the official vote of thanks, but I just want to stamp my thank you to say I really, really did enjoy and appreciated the discussion and the information shared with us today.
I am just so honored and delighted. It's, again, I can't say no to Mr. Lawson, or else he's gonna call me and say, young man. No matter how you climb the ladder, you're always young man, and that's such an endearing term. So it's just my honor. And I say this all the time. I benefited greatly from you all educators. I wouldn't be where I am today without teachers. And it's not an empty platitude at all. I just owe everything. So, Dean Dunkley, no need to talk about affordability here. We're doing God's work. Anytime, if I can humanly do it, I'll be there. So it's just been such an honor. Thank you.
Much appreciated. Thank you, sir. All right, I will turn now to the question and answer segment, and I will read same on your behalf. And the first question, any advice to help with nightmares?
Wow, yeah, that's a good point. So full disclosure, it's not an area that I have studied greatly. So I am gonna say that. So whatever I say, please take it with a grain of salt. I am knowledgeable in the space to a certain extent, but I'm a scientist, so I'm a little bit more conservative. I'm not bombastic with my speech at all. So I have to say that. So oftentimes there's so many different reasons why people may have nightmares. Some could be physiological. Case in point, and I don't mean to make fun of this, but like my daughter, I have a 9-year-old, and I told her, don't eat a ton of sweets before you go to bed. Don't eat heavy meals. And, maybe this is probably revealing how much control I have in my own household. But, for the most part, we're good. And, she would have nightmares. And I told her, physiologically, if you have, a really heavy meal, because your digestive system is overworking, that I have heard that it correlates with a greater likelihood and occurrence of nightmares. So that's physiology. Psychologically, that if you've had a very stressful day, or you're just really worn, it can be associated, with nightmares. So that's psychological. I am happy that I am speaking to an audience where if I say this, no one will roll their eyes, but there might be a spiritual side of it as well, which I have not studied. So, I think in terms of addressing and how to curtail or prevent nightmares, it's very tough. I can't make any offerings or suggestions on the spiritual side. From the psychological side, I can say try to reduce the amount of stress. Go figure, easier said than done. But just to manage that well. And from a physiological side, which was the other domain that I had spoken about, just try to not eat very heavy meals or not to be too active, because nightmares in some ways oftentimes may be a manifestation of just having an out of balance or an imbalanced, kind of a, phase going into sleep, which is why it's important. I think I had shared in one of the slides that the 2 hours preceding sleep, you just have to be careful. So try and avoid the amount of blue light, which I didn't talk about. So the phones and all of that. I mean, I could talk all day about sleep. So I feel bad that I didn't mention that, but now that I have the opportunity to talk about that, be careful. Be careful taking all these supplements as well, too. I know it's part of our culture to have a healthy skepticism for science and medicine because you don't want to take a whole bunch of pills. And I understand that. I understand that weariness and that feeling, that reticence rather. However, a lot of these nutraceuticals are not regulated. So you don't know what they put in it. And because you're not regulated, they don't have to disclose everything that is on the label. So those also can have some adverse effects. And a lot of people pop in melatonin. And I say this all the time, it depends on when you catch me. But because I am, in the midst of my great countrymen and women, I will not be satirical. But I oftentimes say, people say, yeah, I'm going to take up, melatonin. And I said, okay, you're in the ocean, you're out on a boat and you have a cup of water and you throw the water in the ocean, how much did you actually change the volume of the ocean by throwing that cup of water? Not much. And essentially, that's analogous to or melatonin. You have bundles of melatonin in your body, okay? Only in some situations where you can have calcification of the pineal gland, and the pineal gland is the organ that produces the melatonin. Only if you have that, then the melatonin may be off. Or if in jet lag, when you travel different time zones and it's hard for your body to adjust to it, then I would recommend it. But you don't need to take more than 3 milligrams. I say 1 milligram is plenty if you're going to do that. All right. So I hope that was long-winded, but it gave me an opportunity to add some of the things that I had failed to bring up in the presentation.
Yes, sir, we did. The questions are rolling in. Karen Foster is asking, what is the correspondence? And I think you touched on it just a little bit just now. What is the correspondence between sleep and vitamin and mineral deficiency?
Oh, that's a good question. There's a good question. So I kind of spoke about it within the context of inflammation, and inflammation is linked to, bone density. I forget, there's a paper that our group had published. I wasn't on it, but a colleague of mine was, and we were able to show, particularly for women, and I believe it was postmenopausal women, where we looked at the correlation between sleep and bone density through the proxy of osteoarthritis, right? And so we did find that the same kind of U-shaped, J-shaped relationship, and for those of you who don't understand that technical term, but it's essentially, there is risk on both ends. So when it's too low and when it's too high. So that's what it looks like a U, right, in terms of risk. And so, we found something quite similar with that. Now, in terms of the potential confounding that vitamins play in that, unfortunately, I'm not on top of that literature to say definitively how those intersect. And by that, I mean sleep as well as bone density and vitamins. So I would have to punt on that one, but it's a great question, and it's one that as soon as I come off, I'm going to look it up because I love to learn.
Okay, awesome. Thanks so much. So we have a question here from Mr. David Butler. I read an article that suggested that dreams are the brain's way of protecting the visual cortexes from invasions from other regions of the brain. Are you aware of the evidence for this?
Yeah, good question. That I know a lot about. So I can just talk briefly about it. It's actually an area that my friends at MIT in the media lab are doing some phenomenal work. But so here's what we can say. So I think dreams are important, and I'll say the positive first. So each waking moment, you are exposed to so many different things, exposed to different stimuli. And why is it that we don't remember everything? We can't humanly possibly remember everything. So sleep is the one opportunity that allows your brain and allows you to consolidate the most important memories and experiences that you went through, shelf it so that you say, yo, yeah, this is what I went through, but you can't remember everything. Like, if you're driving today, do you remember the person who was driving in front of you? Do you remember the person who was sitting beside you, or a person was sitting two, seats in front of you on the bus? No, it's just, you just can't. But you remember certain things, like if there was an accident or if someone did something nice for you that particular day, and it helps you to consolidate because your brain needs to consolidate that. You do that consolidation during the period where you dream. So this is where information processing occurs. Now, with regards to bad experiences that you may go through, like a trauma, the brain does a fantastic thing autonomously, whereby it can repress certain memories of a very traumatic event, right? And it can shelve. Or it does that during the sleep. So it's in many ways, for the lack of a better term, it shelves it. It puts it into the recesses of your mind so that it does not actually, hurt you. I'll give you an example. Something very benign. So I don't know. I don't know what I was doing, but something had really disturbed me that night, and I was like, oh, I should reach out to the person and clarify that. I felt it viscerally. I woke up, and when I woke up, it was the first thing that I thought about. I'm like, but it wasn't that significant. Why is it that my poor brain is thinking on it? But because there was such injury psychologically for me, that there's a connection with the mind and the body and the spirit and the psychology, that it says, you know what, Azizi, you got to restore this. You got to have to change the meaning of this event and experience that you went through. But because it was discordant with who I was, then this is why it was top of mind. I literally felt that experience when I woke up at 3 a.m. that day. And so I was like, you know what? Relax. I had to talk myself down, and I had to do some cognitive exercise and says, this is insignificant. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to lose sleep about it. And it took me 20 minutes to fall back to sleep with that cognitive restructuring as well. So I hope, it was an expansive answer, but I'm sure there are several nuggets of insights from that question that I just want to give as much information as I know to the audience.
Understand. Would you say there's a correlation between dreams and interpretation?
I think how I would propose that question is, so do your dreams have meaning? And I love how you pose that, because you asked the word, a scientific word, correlation, which I would say, no, I don't know, But I think, science is not just statistics and analyses, but there are other forms of analyses that go beyond the empirical nature of our world. And so, yes, I can say anecdotally that there's some times that, you have certain dreams and it might actually have some significance. So people like a Freud or people like a Carl Jung, who spoke about interpretation of dreams being significant. Now, in modern day psychology, modern day psychiatry, people may look down upon that, but I believe that there is some value. Mm-hmm. And I'm also paying homage to the audience that I have, because, Jamaicans, the one thing that I love about us Jamaican folks is that we believe in the sacred. And we believe in things that are not seen or proven or measured. And so while we are unable to scientifically prove it or measure it, that it doesn't mean that it doesn't have value at all. So dreams can be interpreted, I am sure, but it's not an interpretation that manifests in the immediate, but it may unfold moving forward, or it may actually be something as an outgrowth of historical evidence. So I am not clairvoyant, but maybe we have a reader man or a reader woman who can say a little bit more about that.
Dr. Seixas, the questions are really rolling in. Janet is asking, is 12 milligrams melatonin too much at night?
Yes, 12 is more than 3. Yes. Wow. Sorry, Janet, but I don't know where you're getting that that thing from. And I don't mean to speak harshly, Janet. So there's nothing but love, but just be careful, please. I think if you're going above the 3 milligrams, please speak to a physician. Because I don't want anyone to come sue me and say, well, Dr. Azizi said I should do this or do that. Although I don't think there's jurisdiction, but I believe that I have to hold myself to a higher standard. But I think if you're gonna go over, and you shouldn't be taking things and putting foreign stuff in your body without consulting, a trained health professional. So I would, that would be my recommendation to Janet.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Professor Richards is asking, what are the best ways to reset your circadian rhythm?
Oh, that's a great point. Great question. Different things. I think I'd shared there's certain things that you can do. And it depends on the severity of the misalignment as well, too. So you can have, significant circadian disruption or misalignment. And essentially that means that your gut is on a different clock from your heart. And you see that a lot, where, and I don't mean to say this, Mrs. Leach, I know you said that you're a dolphin, but you see that a lot with dolphins, right? Where, you're eating 9 o'clock at night for dinner and your body was not made to eat heavy dinners that late, especially in the modern human being. So you want to ensure that you don't do that. So to the professor, there are certain things that you can do. Exposing yourself to good sunlight. We have that in bundles in Jamaica. That's one area, because what happens is that you're training the eye. There's a process from the eye to the pineal gland, which helps to ensure that the pineal gland is operating correctly. That is key. You want to get good sunlight exposure. You want to exercise, but because exercise does make you tired, because essentially that's how you, especially if you want to realign your circadian rhythm, particularly the sleep side of things, that is key. You want to eat certain foods, you want to eat at certain times, ensuring that those major important activities, eating, sleeping, thinking, doing work and play, that they have certain set times to be done. So that's how you can, realign your circadian rhythm behaviorally. There are some physiological ways. Some of my colleagues out in New Zealand and Australia doing it by using these, cool looking glasses and goggles to help re-entrain the circadian rhythm. But those are just, behavioral as well as devices, strategies that you can use to re-entrain your circadian rhythm if it's misaligned.
Thank you so much. And just before we continue with the questions, we'd just like to say the evaluation, we will be posting the link to the evaluation of the webinar in the chat. I am asking, please, that once it's posted, that you complete same. For those persons who request, would like a certificate, we ask you to indicate same on the evaluation, but just to note that in order for you to get a certificate for professional development, you would have had to at least attend 2 of the webinars. So this is the second. There are 2 more to go. So please look to the chat. There's the link. It's posted. Please complete same. Thank you. Continuing now with the questions, Dr. Seixas, from Dr. Pinnock. His question, there is a popular belief that as you get older, you need less sleep. Is this true? And if so, is there a balance?
Sorry, I was on mute. My huge apologies. So I think I've spoken about this when we're going over the lifespan. So, that person who asked the question is absolutely correct. That being an older adult or a senior citizen, you still need your sleep. It's just that you're not getting your full complement of 7 to 8 hours in one sitting. You may get it through naps. But that doesn't mean that your body doesn't need sleep. So here, let me do a little bit of science to explain and to convince people. Because I don't want people to say, because I said so. Because everything that I say is oftentimes rooted in experience and in research. So there are certain parts of your brain that are critical and responsible for initiating sleep. And what happens is that as you age, those parts of your brain don't work optimally. So not just initiating sleep, but staying asleep as well. Like there is something, like if you look at the human body, we're made to move, we're made to be active. So in many ways, staying asleep is really an active process. You literally have to shut your body down. And so as you age, that those parts of the brain don't work as well. No, those are some of the same parts of the brain that are responsible for some key significant responsibilities, memory, certain cognitive processes as well. So there is no coincidence why as you age, your memory goes somewhat and some of your cognitive processes go, as well as your sleep, because it's the same area of the brain that's responsible for those functions that are actually eroding. And that's why you see that. But it doesn't mean that an older adult doesn't need to rest, because they still need to lower their blood pressure level. They still need to maintain good homeostasis, keeping a constant and kind of a equilibrium in the body as well. So we need that, and older adults need that as well, if not more. I think, Mrs. Leach, I think you followed what I did as well, and you're on mute.
We will be taking the final question from Anne-Marie and Wilmot, that is. She's asking, what is responsible for a person acting out in their dreams?
Yeah, no, so that's really going there. There's so many different reasons why. There's so many different conditions. So there's this phenomenon where people sleepwalk. It's less scary and I guess ethereal if you see it as something scientific. So typically, people who have these conditions have problems in the REM stage of their sleep. And now a lot of us as researchers, we're finding that, you can have a whole bunch of disorders in the REM phase of your sleep. And so you can have sleep paralysis as well. You can have the opposite of that where people sleepwalk, and it can be done. I love science, so I'll say this as well, because it's I don't want to just present things in the negative always. But some colleagues have started looking at this concept, and even myself, in this concept of sleep hacking, right? And you can actually, when someone is in the REM stage and they're really not awake to the world, you can ask them and provide certain commands and they can respond to you, right? And so people are looking at this as an opportunity of learning, go figure, as educators. So can you imagine you put your lectures on and your students are at home, if you prime it in a way where they can listen and absorb things during the REM stage, that it can prime them. So it may not, they may not learn anything, but they will be primed so that when they come to school the next day, that they're ready to learn. So there are so many different, novel, innovative, studies and inventions and innovations that people are currently undertaking in the realm of sleep, but more so sleep as a neuroscientific phenomenon, because in many ways that's one way of looking at it. But sleep is not just a brain phenomenon or a neuroscientific phenomenon, it's a whole body phenomenon as well.
Thank you very much for the responses. I mean, I know that there are more questions, but based on time, this is where we have to end. What we will do is to note your questions nonetheless, forward same to Dr. Seixas, and we will give you the responses at a later date.
Yeah, that'll be great. And
Yes.
I don't want to overstay my welcome, but I'm happy to come back if you would like me.
Anytime.
Perfect.
Anytime. So, sir, we really want to say thank you for all that you have done here this afternoon. It was time well spent. I just want to offer my personal thank you, but officially, we have to ensure that we do it and we do it right. Let me invite at this time Mr. Mikhail Clark to do the official acknowledgements.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Moderator, Mrs. Melanie Leach, President of the Michael University College, Dr. Asburn Pinnock, Vice President of Academics, Dr. Albert Benjamin, Vice President of Administration, Mr. Rudolph Sewell, Dean K. Dunkley, and other deans of the faculties in attendance, University College Placement Officer, Mrs. Maureen Mullins Nelson, Practicum Coordinator, Mr. Alvin Lawson, guest speaker, Dr. Azizi Statius, and other specially invited guests, lecturers, student colleagues, viewers here and in the diaspora, a grand afternoon is conferred to you all. It is my distinct honor and privilege to propose the vote of thanks to all who have helped us in making this webinar a memorable occasion. Let me first of all start by giving glory to the Almighty God for making today's occasion a resounding success. I join with all attendees here in giving my hearty vote of thanks to our dynamic, insightful, and distinguished guest speaker, Dr. Satius, who despite his busy schedule has found time to grace this occasion. Dr. Satius, on behalf of the Michael University College, I would like to thank you for your thought-provoking and interesting presentation on the importance of sleep to teachers' mental and physical health in changing times. Dr. Satius, based on the questions and the answers and the presentation itself, I am confident that after today's session, our educators are better positioned to apply the knowledge and resources you have disseminated in order to improve our overall health and wellness. We are all inspired by your great work and urge you to continue making positive strides to improve not only Jamaica, but the entire global village. To our specially invited guests, including Madam Principal of St. George's College and your team for being in this session to support this distinguished son of your noble institution, who continues to contribute immensely to this country and the world at large. Thank you. To our other principals and administrators joining in this conversation of wellness, as I like to call it, we want to thank you for being here, and we hope you gained valuable knowledge to apply in your lives. Teamwork divides the task and multiplies the success. With this said, I must emphasize that an event of this caliber cannot happen overnight. The wheels started rolling weeks ago, and it required planning and a bird's eye for details. We have been fortunate enough here at the Michael University College to be backed by a team of very motivated and dedicated individuals who are result-oriented. It is on such a premise that we convey our gratitude to Mrs. Mullins Nelson, Mr. Lawson, Dean Dunkley, Mrs. Rochester, Mrs. Leon, and our moderator, Mrs. Leach, for adding new dimension for successful organization of this international webinar in a most befitting manner. This afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, prove that all things are possible if we put hearts and hands together. Profound thanks and gratitude is also due to you, our audience of educators, innovators, nation builders, movers and shakers of the future, for your continued support rendered to us for this most meaningful production by the Michael University College. I cannot thank you enough for your involvement and your willingness to bring this initiative to fruition. We thank you for being with us this evening. This has been a great pleasure. I end with a quote that says, "Gratitude is the quality similar to electricity. It must be produced and discharged and used up in order to exist at all." So as we express our gratitude, we must never forget that the highest appreciation is not to utter words, but to live by them. Thank you for attending. And we say, as we say here at the Micah University College, continue to do it with your might. Have a great afternoon, everyone. Thank you.
Well said, Mikhail. Well said. Well said. It's only left for me now to say thanks to everyone. Thank you for coming out. It is indeed our pleasure to have had you in this session. I do hope that the rest of your afternoon will be good. I know that we have gotten a lot of takeaways from this session. Definitely some that I've noted, Dr. Seixas, and some that I will definitely implement in my personal life, and I know others will do the same. Thank you so much again for the presentation, and thanks to everyone for coming out and making this webinar a success. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. This was such an honor, and I'm so impressed. I'm so impressed.
Thank you very much, my brother.
Thank
We will
you.
talk.
Thank you. Thank you. This is my first presentation as a University of Miami faculty, and I think it was very fitting. It's very memorable. Thank you. I'm so blessed.